Vader versus the Z-Man. The Vader gimmick, the Big Van Vader gimmick, was originally lined up for the Ultimate Warrior before he was in WWF.
I still don't know. I don't know what Van Vader means.
No,
Big Van is just a big van.
Yeah,
which Americans don't use. These lorry and truck.
Yeah.
So Big Van.
This is Nature Boy all over again. I've never actually questioned it until now.
And a Darth Vader thing.
He's a Big Van Vader.
He's a Big Van Vader.
He's a Big Van Vader.
He's a Big Van Vader. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it must be the Japanese sense of coming out with it.
Oh, just kind of like a bit Star Wars, bit of big.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is Darth Vader influence. That was the idea with the helmet. But I mean, what is it? What is it? It's not like licensed. I don't know what it is. I mean, Leon White, who the actor who plays the role of Big Van Vader, he's a brilliant performer, and he's hitting his Japanese peak around here.
Right,
and he comes in and they just give him the big sell, and he will become a very, very big WCW star over the next couple of years. He has a bit of an intermittent drop in and out here. They get him in for big shows and then he goes again. So he doesn't really build up a lot of steam.
This is a debut in WCW, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And he comes on wearing Jesus Christ, it's like a Ghostbusters backpack designed by H.R. Giger.
Yeah.
Like, it's this horrific kind of ceremonial headdress that they're filled with smoke on.
Yeah, it has like gas jets that
come out. But clearly what's happened, because he comes out, takes the headdress off, he's got a mask underneath, so that's scary enough. So we've got two concepts here that don't really match anyway. He takes off the headset, he puts it down, and he goes, and smoke starts coming out of it, right? It would have been more impressive if the smoke was coming out when he was wearing it, surely. Yeah. But clearly, it was too loud, too dangerous, so that he has to set it down before the jets of compressed air comes out.
I don't know how it goes off. I do not know how it goes off. Is it remotely?
Is it timed?
Because he always put it down, and then
it would
point it.
Have I seen that before? Have I seen him do that before? I don't think I have.
Do you know what you may have seen it in? There was a meme going around, a little GIF going around quite a while, which showed Jushin Liger, the light heavyweight, kicking it over when he'd laid it down. And Big Van Vader absolutely pelting after him in fury, and Liger just fucking splits it. He just races, but it's really good. He kicks it over, and Vader has that proper thing of going, "Oh, you!" It's amazing,
wonderful.
But he did do it. I mean, it was effective. But as you say, I don't know what it was. No, I don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was.
The thing that I love about this is Vader comes out, and actually, what you don't get an impression of quite in this match is how frightening he is.
Yeah,
and it's a squash of Tom Zenk. Actually, I think maybe it's Bob Caudle. He has the helmet, and they've mentioned he's working in Japan.
Yeah.
I think Bob Caudle goes, maybe it's some kind of samurai ceremony.
Yeah, they try and go down that attack for a bit, don't they?
I mean, what was after that? Maybe it's some kind of sushi preparation. Really sort of like the samurai. Yeah, it's samurai. Bob, what do you know about the samurai? Because they didn't have fucking gas jet remote controlled helmets. You moron.
Well, being a big Nihonophile, I think I find that they very much didn't.
I mean, you could say that, of course, Star Wars is influenced greatly by the, for example, the Lone Wolf and Cub films, which of course do show a Ronin. So, I mean, it's a shame you didn't do your research.
Oh dear,
he's hauntingly strong, says Jim Ross.
Strong,
and that is the thing. When you get a bit frightened, you start mentioning weird words. And hauntingly strong, I was like, what does that mean? And I'm like, but it's right. It's right.
He's obtusely violent.
He is scary.
But I like that Big Van Vader here, who, you're right, he goes over massively well. It doesn't matter how good he is at the splash and protecting his fellow wrestler.
Yeah.
His belly is so big, it's a proper squish.
This is
when he lands. Squish, squish, squish.
In the history of wrestling, I'd say there are 6 or 7 out of the maybe 80 million splashes that have been done that actually look like a devastating move.
Such a
This is one of them.
Oh, wow.
This is one of them.
Absolutely crushes
Vader,
him.
famous as well for being stiff. He is a big star in Japan.
Yeah.
He is not going to come back to America for less money. His big money is in Japan at this stage. He's not going to come back to America and go, well, I'll do a soft match like the Americans do. He's just like, I'm going to squash some buggers. And you are the bugger I'm going to squash. And everything he does is devastating and violent. You knew when Vader came in that he was something special, but he would end up dominating WCW for 3 or 4 years, maybe 2 or 3 years, and he would have some absolutely fantastic matches. He, in his weird way, he doesn't get much credit for it, but his stiff style, it really changed a bit of wrestling, the way that people went into the main events.
Right.
You can see a lot of Vader in Brock Lesnar. in the way that he's, doing now.
Right.
Short matches, brutal. They are a different level from the rest of the card.
Yeah.
And you can really see, before Vader, no one had really done that in a mainstream way.
Yeah.
And he's like a proto Brock Lesnar.
The legend of Sting is over. The myth the WCW calls Sting is through. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. For I am the uncrowned WCW heavyweight champion
of the world. Sting, we talked about pain. Sting, we talked about going to school and learning the game of pain. Well, brother, how does it feel? I understand you went to the hospital, Sting. Did it hurt? I understand you cried, Sting. Did it hurt?
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest, it is set for one fall with a 15-minute time limit. Introducing first to my right from Oil Trough, Texas, weighing 235 pounds, Dirty Dutch Mantell.
It's worth saying Dutch Mantell comes down to the ring in the background of the Harley race interview.
Yes. You just see, it's so funny because you just see a man who's clearly a wrestler just getting on with it. Yeah. They're interviewing a wrestler. He's in the background just walking towards his place of work.
Yeah, and I looked at that
you
and
may
I
as well
thought,
have a fucking flask and a sandwich.
Well, I suppose what they're doing is they're going, don't invest in this guy. This one's not the one you want to invest in. But then it cuts to the ring, and both of them are in there, Doug Furness and Dirty Dutch Mantell. So in a weird way, they've kind of gone, neither of these guys are worthy of an entrance. And it's like, well, that's insanely bad. They refer to Dutch Mantell, a real veteran, says Jim Ross, versus, again, the New Revolution theme, a new guy who is Doug Furness. Doug Furness, one of those guys who everyone talks about as he had all the attributes that he needed to become a huge, huge star.
Right.
But one thing that Doug Furness had that was different from other people, Doug Furness just had no fucking luck. Right? So I think you look at him here, and he was a power lifter, and he's in incredible shape.
Oh, he's in amazing shape.
And for the time, he was doing stuff that not a lot of people, certainly of that size, could do.
Right.
He was doing drop kicks that were really high. He'd then do a press slam. He'd then do technical wrestling.
Yeah.
He sort of had it all. What he really lacked was personality. He had a slightly funny face as well.
He looks like what I think Vince Vaughn would probably look at him and go, that's what I look like.
Yes. Yeah. He's got very little piggy eyes.
Yeah.
He looks like, again, he could be in his 20s, could be in his 50s. Really hard to work out. He's got a scrubby moustache, which is in between different styles and stuff. And he's slightly cross-eyed, and he's got a tight, curly fro.
Imagine we're doing a match between Doug Furness and Dutch Mantell, and we're talking about what Doug Furness looks like.
Oh,
for fuck's sake, Mark!
Let me make it clear. I just want to get Doug Furness out of the way because let me tell you.
Sorry, Doug.
Let us get stuck into Dirty Dutch Mantell.
Dirty Dutch Mantell. Now, I meant to go back and write down a list of things that I think Dutch Mantell looks like, but the only thing I had down was Dutch Mantell is disgusting. I hate him. He looks like an abattoir worker who refuses to use the stun gun because he wants them to feel his deeds. He looks like the worst man in the world.
I agree. I have written down, he is really hairy. You've got to give him that.
You've got to give him that. He's so hairy. And you know, like, all right, hairy beard, sideburns. It's back. It's all back.
Yeah.
He's grown more hair on his back than I've ever grown in my life.
It's not even hair, it's pelted. He's got pelts of fur all over him, right? Apart from, for some reason, he shaved his upper arms, right? Like, either because he wants to go, gets to do workout, really shows off the guns, or he's gone, if I shave the upper arms, it makes the rest of the pelt stand out all the more. And that, I have a feeling he is so brilliant at wrestling that he's gone, if I shave the upper arms, I look even more like a fucking hobbit.
It's like contouring.
Oh,
it's like just contour, like when they put fake six packs on actors. Just do that with hair.
Do you know, the other thing about it is you see that how thick the hair on his back is. The leotard, when it's on his back, when it obviously moves, moves, instead of like just sitting on top of the hair, it begins parting the hair like a parting. And so it looks like he shaved the hair off his like leotard stripes. He hasn't. The leotard's just pushed the hair aside.
He's just trying to get a bit of purchase on the Dutch Mantell.
It is amazing. Jim Ross at one point says he's not real concerned about his appearance. And I also wrote, he looks foul.
He's horrible.
He really, really does. But Jesus Christ, Dutch Mantell is really, really, really good. He's one of those guys who, as a kid, when he'd appear, I'd always be like, oh, God, because he seemed ancient. He seemed like fucking, Lord of the Rings always comes to my mind. It's like hobbits and dwarves and stuff. And he just seems like something that's come out of a fucking cave. And he's got to go back and melt iron or whatever they do. But he's having a wrestling match so they can get a bit of money to buy, I don't know, fucking bread or whatever they need for the dwarf children. I don't know. But he comes out and he's so disgusting. And this match, you just go, this is a proper wrestling character.
Yeah.
He is exactly what you need at this point.
Oh, in my heart, I've got an immediate reaction to his physique now, and appearance and upkeep.
They say he's from Oil Trough, Texas. And again, he's chosen that sort of like hometown that sums up everything you need. Oil Trough, Texas. What a horrible trough. He's basically going, I am a beast. I am a beast and I am not like ye.
I'm from shit pit, Odessa.
But Bob Caudle says, Jim, you're from Texas. Where's Oil Trough? And Jim just goes, don't know. No interest.
Goes, I don't know. Here it might be the west of the.
Yeah, I wish you hadn't asked that, Bob. Is basically what I'm saying.
Tell me, where in the world is Oil Trough, Texas? Bob, I'm from Oklahoma, and I'm not really that familiar with Texas, but I think it's out in the western part of the state. I'm not real sure about that, though.
Now, Dutch Mantell is one of those guys who, he is a disgusting troglodyte. He is like a Neanderthal missing link.
He's a side mission in Red Dead Redemption.
Exactly that. He is one of the great wrestling minds of his generation.
Really, right.
So he starts off in 1972 working in the southern states, and he works in the southern states for most of his career.
Yeah.
Partly that's because of his size. He is a relatively small wrestler. But what he gets is he's working at a time where he's working against huge people who've been around the business for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And Dutch Mantell will have a career that pretty much lasts until the present day, right? And he does that not because he's pretty, not because everyone bought his posters.
It's because everyone thinks he's a rug. and you don't replace rugs often.
He does it because he is a walking repository of part of the business which has now disappeared.
Right.
So he goes on to basically become a mentor to some of the biggest stars in the world.
Yeah.
So working in these small southern wrestling federations and things, you get a lot of green people coming up doing their first things. He is seen as being instrumental in the careers of the Blade Runners, who would go on to have fame as Sting and the Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
And he worked in the early days with The Undertaker and Kane. And both of them credit him with saying he taught us so much about the business.
Yeah.
He had a short run in the mid-90s with WWF as a sort of manager character who could also get beaten up. He was Uncle Zebekiah, and he worked with the Godwins, the hillbillies that I hate so much.
Oh, yes. That would be a good fit.
After he leaves the WWE in this period, in the mid-90s, he goes to WWC in Puerto Rico, and he became the booker for that territory. He would later move to IWA, which was the other federation in Puerto Rico. While he was in the IWA, he set the record for the number of hours that a single writer produced for a TV wrestling show. He was responsible for 4 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and he did a total of 208 hours a year for 5 years.
Fucking hell.
And they were very, very hot territories. He was a really decent, good, old-fashioned booker.
Yeah.
From 2003 to 9, he was part of the booking team for TNA, and then he came back to WWE as a character called Zeb Colter, who was a sort of internet right-wing character. He was like a MAGA before there was MAGA, where he would be talking about, immigration and things like that. And he did it really, really well.
My fellow Americans, I implore you to ask yourselves, what's really going on here? What's really going on is that this country is going down the toilet, and yet real Americans like myself and Jack Swagger are vilified because we speak the truth and put America first.
But he was really good, a really good talker. And he is still active in the business. But you could look at anyone on this card, and who is the person who has presumably had the biggest effect on wrestling since this pay-per-view. In the top 5 is certainly Dutch Mantell. It's amazing. When they say a new revolution, you know, Dutch Mantell is like, that is fine, but to be honest, I haven't evolved. Evolution passed me by.
Yeah.
Revolution is not going to take me out. I will be here forever.
There's a bit that really stood out as being really technically interesting for me. Doug is getting pinned by Dirty Dutch.
Yeah.
And then Doug does like a flip up like, to get out of the pin. And Dutch goes absolutely flying. It's such a good sell.
Yeah.
I was like, it's looked so natural. Like he was like, Doug is the most powerful man in the world. It looked amazing.
One of those little things that you notice is, again, this is harking back to something that happens in the Southern Territories, where they do that thing to make the guy look strong. The little guys will propel themselves.
Yeah.
Often when they kicked out of a 2 count like that, people would roll out of the ring.
Right.
The other person who you can see that in, who worked in the Southern States and who worked quite a long program with Dutch Mantell. Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, Macho Man Randy Savage.
So often Randy Savage would be with Hogan. Hogan would kick out, and Macho Man would he'd go 3 rows back, you know. And that's almost like one of those little southern tricks. But this is, he just is one of those things that you watch him and you go, Dutch Mantell, didn't he do something else? And when you look into him, you begin going, I think he's probably one of my top 10 favourite people.
I feel like I've been educated on like the Gruffalo or something. Something that just sort of passed me by as a thing, a little hairy thing for somebody else, and now you've explained the law. I have much more respect for this hairy man.
I do sometimes look at this, I do sort of think, you know, because I think of them as being cartoon characters. I don't think of them being real people to some degree. And I do sort of think, you know, he's married, he certainly had kids and things, and I sort of think, how did a lady agree? Because I sort of go, he's a cartoon character. He's Captain Caveman, isn't he? And there's a lady who went, you know, I absolutely love you and would like to share my life and bed with you.
Well, I think,
you know,
exactly.
I look like a hairy nut. I look like a sort of really old man's testicle.
But like, if you sort of listen to his to the way he speaks there, he's got a beautiful speaking voice.
It's lovely.
Like, so there's hope for us all. That's all I'm saying. There's hope for us all.
And we believe that the world champion of WWE, Alberto Del Rio, is a perfect example of the problems that plague our country, which is why Jack Swagger is going to beat Alberto Del Rio at WrestleMania, win the world title, and begin to set things right in this country.
We, the people.
Hey, Glenn Beck, what you just saw is what we call a promo. It's a scene we record to elicit a positive or negative reaction from our fans. In our story, we are the antagonist, and Alberto is the protagonist. Many of your followers are WWE fans, and they understand the difference between reality and entertainment. So now, let's get back in character. You see, real Americans like Zeb Colter and Jack Swagger won't